This is Steve Bailey, and this is Coffee Talk.
Hey everybody, I'm Kim Perlak. I'm the chair of the guitar department at Berklee College of Music, and welcome to another Coffee Talk. We're joined as usual by our assistant chair, Cheryl Bailey. Hey Cheryl.
Hey, I'm hydrating at this
Smart.
time. I had a lot of espresso earlier, so.
Our senior coordinator, Ben Cody, is also here. Hey Ben.
Hello.
Hey. And our guest today is Steve Bailey, the chair of the bass department here at Berklee. Hey Steve.
Hi, y'all. Cream in my coffee. How do you take yours?
Black. This is black. Yeah. And
Perfect.
I could make some analogy, but I started actually drinking black coffee here when I was assistant chair because that's how Larry Bayonne took it, and it was easier to go get coffee. It just made it simpler, and I got into it that way. Um,
Well,
yeah, are you a long time coffee drinker, or was it like a music related situation?
I didn't start drinking coffee probably until I was in my late 30s.
Really? What made you start?
Um, I'm trying to remember exactly. I don't know. It's like those childhood memories. I don't know what made me start. I really don't. I think it had to do with playing music either late at night and getting up early to go surfing. But I know as much as it would seem like musicians introduced me to it, I know it was surfers that introduced me to the benefits of coffee.
How long have you been surfing?
Um, about 2 years longer than I've been playing bass. So I started surfing when I was 10.
Where were you at the time? Were you in California?
No, I was in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Nice. And you're still surfing, or no?
Yes, I will be this afternoon before I'm late for my plane and unfortunately will miss the flight.
You only say that because it snowed here this morning, and
Now, my brother, we often joke that music got in the way of my pro surfing career, and he was the champion surfer. He was U.S. surfing champion in 1974, 75, something like that. And he said being poor got in the way of him being a professional surfer because it didn't really exist way back then. And he lived in Hawaii after high school and woke up one day and said, you know what? I think I want to be a doctor. And so he became a doctor.
cool, cool.
But I made a living playing bass, which is a heck of a lot harder than being any doctor I know.
Steve, a lot of people who are listening to this are relatively new Berkeley people, and so we kind of got into this thing about first days. Do you remember your first day here in any
First day
capacity?
at Berkeley or first day playing bass?
First day at Berkeley.
Oh, okay.
Any of your first days, anything that first day applies to in the
Yeah, I
Berkeley sphere.
I do actually remember my first day on the job. I'll never forget it because I was playing in Washington, right outside of Washington, at this club. I was on tour with Victor Wooten, and we were. I'm trying to remember. I'll think of the name of the club down there. It's just outside of DC. But I had a Saturday, no, a weekend off, a Friday for some reason. So I took a train. Didn't I take a train? Well, that shows you. Okay, I got here, and it was like 55 degrees in June in
Yeah.
Boston. I
Yes.
mean, literally, it was cold and windy, and I had shorts on, and I was cold, and it's June, and I thought, what the heck have I gotten myself into? And I remember going into my office, and it was hard to believe now, but it was empty. Rich Appleman had left it literally empty with a desk there, and he left this little refrigerator, which still works 15 years later. And I'm going to try to bequeath that to the next person to sit at that desk, and that may be the only thing I leave, though. But yeah, it was a. I don't remember anything about the day itself. In fact, I remember very little about that whole first summer, but I do remember that day in particular.
You know, it's funny you say that because when I did the final round of trying out for assistant chair, it was June 10th, and it was freezing in Boston. And all of my pictures that I shared, I didn't want to tell anybody why I was here, but I sent them. Everybody commented like, "It looks cold there." It was like it looked cold, and I walked into the room. I had run into Larry before my like concert presentation thing. We went for coffee, and when I walked in the room, you were there, and that's where we met
I
on that
remember
day.
that.
Very cold June day, like a couple years after you had gotten here.
Yep.
So, yeah,
My, how
beware.
time flies.
I know. So, everybody may not know that one of the reasons this is coming up is because this is your last year as the chair. You're going to retire from the chair at Berkeley and move on to some other things in your life that are exciting. But as you're thinking about it, like a number of people are going to listen to this as they're about to graduate or about their come into Berkeley. Are there things that really stick out to you about the experience or being here that you think are important that you're thinking about as you're wrapping up your time in this role?
Wow, that's that's to entering students. There's a couple little things. If you're a bass player, now I can't speak for other instruments, but if you're a bass player coming to Berkeley, learn a new word that you may be told not to use this word, but as a bass player, you're going to have to use this word. It's called, everybody says say yes to everything. As a bass player, you can learn the easy way or the hard way, but you got to learn to say no, because we're underrepresented proportionally as an instrument, and playing opportunities will be so plentiful for most bassists who will take care of some other little things that I'll probably end up talking about. But if you're looking after your musicality, your personality, and your responsibility, you're just going to be busy. People are going to want to play with you, and I always encourage people to become a little more picky as they get busy. The second thing, and I know the chairs are going to smile when I say this, and this is to entering students: don't worry about those 4 or 5 numbers that somebody's going to give you. They're important for rating and getting people. Oh, I'm sorry, my Siri is speaking to me for some reason. The numbers. I have so many people come who want to retake their entering student audition, as we call them, but they're basically an assessment. And I always tell students they are just a photograph, a snapshot of that moment. And try, it's hard to convince. It would have been hard to convince me as well, but it's not that big a deal. Just come in and get settled and start playing and doing your best. And those numbers, how we use them in the ensemble system, will tend to make sense. But it's maybe it's just a bass thing, but so many students' self-worth is built around those numbers early on, and we find that if people really want to play and they really want to learn, there's one of our graduates who I'm not going to mention his name, who's so busy in LA making tons of money and doing great gigs. And he graduated with threes. Mm-hmm. Because once he realized, hey, if I can play and I do my work and get good grades and play well, those other numbers don't matter. So he just never really tested again. So yeah, that's kind of a big one. I don't know. I'd be curious. What do you think, Kim and Cheryl? If I can, I'll impart.
I'll throw it to Cheryl for a minute because Cheryl, you have a lot to say about the ratings numbers, especially as a chair and an alum. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think, Steve, that's a great way to describe it to students, that it's a snapshot. I always say use it as a benchmark. I mean, again, like you're talking about your alum there, and they didn't re-audition again, and that's also, some people don't do that, but I always recommend that they do, because the numbers go up because you're working hard, right? And it just sort of gives you a pat on the back, if you came in reading at ones, and then next time you go you get threes, and the next time you go get five. Wow, okay, you get a kind of a immediate feedback on your hard work. So I think that's what I try to talk to the students about, is to use them as just pointing you in a direction in your skill set, and then use it as a benchmark, and it'll be a positive experience. It's not a judgment at all.
And I totally agree. We send out a notice, probably most chairs do, twice a semester, just telling people to re-audition, as the term goes, and do build those numbers. Because if they're anything like me, if I've got a choice between a 1 and an 8, I want to leave with an 8, or as close as I can get to it. I guess my point is more that it just like out in the real world, playing gigs, and I know you've all experienced this, nobody ever asked me to either see my diploma, or they want to know. They don't want to know anything other than how I play, and I love to get students into that frame of mind early. That numbers, as important as they might be for our personal benchmarks, and I totally get that. And maybe it's just because it's still new to me. I've only been here 15 years. How long have you been here, Cheryl?
25.
Oh wow! I thought you would be. I don't know why.
That's not including my time as a student. That's just on the faculty.
Okay, and well, that's kind of a mid timer at Berkeley.
It's really true. I love what you said about what can you demonstrate. And, sometimes we'll have students and everybody's so young and they say, well, I don't, their kind of insecure defense mechanism thing is, I'm not going to need that. It's like, well, I don't think you'll ever regret getting better at what you do and at what we do. You'll never regret it. And you don't know what you're going to do really when you leave. You have a sense, but things are going to develop, and you don't want to box yourself out of things. And I think when you learn about your instrument, you learn about yourself. And I feel like that's really important. If you learn to confront the things that are uncomfortable and get great at them, I think it's a good thing.
Let me give you a little example of that. And in my world, we read in bass clef,
Right.
and primarily that's it. I was always encouraged early on by my college, one in particular college professor, to read treble clef, and he would give me the real book in treble clef. He would not let me have it in bass clef. So I had to learn all the melodies with treble clef. He gave me flute parts, and it just kind of opened up this whole other avenue of melodic playing. But it seemed like one of David Letterman's silly pet tricks or whatever that I could read until one day in a studio in LA, in Hollywood, that they had this great, somebody back there in the suit said, can you play that in unison? And I forget what was playing it, but it was a trumpet or something like that. And they said, but we don't have a bass part written out. They put a concert. Thank God it wasn't the trumpet part, and I would have to transpose it and read it in treble clef. But they put it up there, and I read it. I made music with it, and my point is, opportunities come. You just don't know where they're coming from. But they were so blown away with that I know I did 200 jingles for that person after that. I was a sub when I got there, and usually what sub for me meant that Lee Sklar couldn't make it, Nathan East couldn't make it, Jimmy Johnson couldn't make it, Jimmy Haslip couldn't make it, and maybe I was down around 5 on the list, or probably lower, but because of one particular skill set, I was able to convert that account, as they say, and I mean, kind of the rest that shaped my early recording career. And everybody reads bass clef out there, but I just had that one little skill set. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying, learn everything you can, because someday it's just like having a toolbox. You're going to need that one tool, and if you have it, it's going to make the difference.
I'm glad that you talked about that, because I feel like sometimes people have this sense of like your career path is one thing, or different career paths are sort of singular and then you combine them. But I think your musical life is proof that it's not really like that. You've done so many different things. You've been a studio musician and a touring musician and a side person and an educator and a chair. And I mean, can you talk a little bit about some of the different things that you've done, and if you see like kind of threads of similarity in there?
Okay, it goes back to the first song I ever played. Raise your hand if y'all remember the first song you played in your life on the guitar. Okay, good. I was a trombone player. Seriously, do not kick me off right now. Just hang with me for a second. Yeah.
Well, you might be the first trombone player we've had on Coffee Talk.
Well, there's stories in there too,
or at least the one that admits it. No, all love to trombone.
You're all welcome on Coffee Talk.
Let's see where it is. I'm going to play it. No, but a drummer in junior high, when I was 12, right as I got there, he said, "We hear you play trombone. Do you want to play bass?" He came up to me and I said, "Well, I'm not sure." And he said, "Well, we have a gig for a walkathon in a couple of weeks." And it sounds like a joke. Do you want to play the bass? Why? Because there'd be some cool people there in 2 weeks, cool for a 12-year-old. That means 14-year-olds will be at this walkathon, and it's in 2 weeks. So I went to his house. I think it was that afternoon, and this house, I drove by it not long ago, and I look over at it, and the deja vu is incredible. But we went upstairs where his mom created a playing room, and they gave me an instrument and put my left index finger on a fret. And I know that to be the 9th fret. And my other finger plucked here, and I played do, 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 do. What song is that?
That's about 100. It's part of the
Exactly. Perfect answer.
Pythagorean tetrachord.
No, it was all along the Watchtower. and and I played it for about an hour, and that's all we played. And I walked out of there and I had a blister, these big blisters on the tip of both fingers. And honestly, I remember standing in their doorway and looking at my fingers like this, and then seeing my mom pull up out front to pick me up. And I got in the car and I said, guess what? And I'm going to be a bass player. And so about a week later, she came back she worked for the government, and she had driven to this other air base, and she came back and stopped at a pawn shop and asked them if they had a bass, and they sold her a bass for $17. And that ought to tell you what kind of bass, or how good of a bass it was, at least. So that was my very first playing experience on the bass. So I'm a rock and roll musician. I mean, that's where I got started. And you're asking about the kind of diversity in my career. And then I met a guy who was teaching music at a college. He was teaching music theory at this local college here. And somebody said he knows how to play bass too. So I took bass lessons from him. He's a guitar player. And he studied with Jack Peterson at North Texas. So he started showing me these extended fingerings and all the proper way to finger scales and stuff. And I didn't have to do it 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 everywhere. And he was also a classical guitarist, so he got me into this 3-finger right-hand technique of alternating and stuff. And so I really started to learn a lot about music with him. And he said, if you want to play jazz, go get a jazz album. And they had this record store, and he sent me, he said, get any jazz album. And I didn't know what, so I go in there and say, do you have a jazz album? And they said, yes. There's a new one out from Chick Corea. And I'm thinking, okay, what is a Chick Corea? I didn't even know who or what that was. And it was Chick Corea's Light as a Feather, which, yes, right, Cheryl.
My favorite. That's desert island territory right there.
Yes, with Spain on it, and 500 miles high. And I didn't know Stanley Clarke from Stanley Steamer. You know, it was really, and Stanley Clarke is playing double bass on this, and I was like, okay, that's jazz bass playing. I better get to work. And I literally, from that album, Jack Austin is his name, the guitar teacher, bass teacher. We started playing some of the songs, and he had them transcribed. And so that album changed me into a jazz musician. Just because next thing I know, he's playing Miles Davis for me, or he's playing Sonny Rollins for me, or he's another guy who I just saw a couple weeks ago was a saxophone player in town then, and he was turning me on to all kinds of other stuff. So after my first year at North Texas, I'll never forget this moment. I came home, it was my first semester, and the phone rang, and my mom answered it, and she said, Steve, it's for you. It's a person named Jeff. And I get on the phone and he goes, hey man, this is Jeff Cook, and we're in a band down here at the Bowery in Myrtle Beach, which is like 6 blocks from my house. And he goes, we heard you, quote, we heard you pick a pretty mean bass. Would you like to join our band? He says, I think we're going to be signed to RCA. And I'm thinking, I don't even know what that means. But my reply to him was, no thank, or he said, we're a country rock band. And my response to him was, no. After one semester in jazz school, I was a jazz musician. I said, I don't play that kind of music. I'm a jazz musician. So move ahead to my sophomore year, there's this band called Alabama who went on to win that was Jeff Cook from Alabama on the phone. And we met years later at some function or something, and I told him the story. He was like marveling at something I was doing. He was hanging around, and I went, and he's going, well, you play those chords, you do this and that, and you do that. And I said, Jeff, you don't remember calling me when I was 18, do you? And I told him the story, and he said, that sounds like something I would do. But I'm glad I didn't do it, because I ended up playing jazz, and through college, I got the gig with Paquito D'rivera coming out of college, and then with Dizzy Gillespie, and then in the jazz world. But my heart was still in rock, a lot of it. I mean, I still listen to it. I remember quoting Jimi Hendrix in some of my solos with Dizzy, and Diz would go, why do those people clap every time you go brow 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 brow? And I said, because it's a Jimi Hendrix song. You're quoting Charlie Parker, I'm quoting Jimi Hendrix, and he never really incorporated Jimi Hendrix into his solos, thank goodness. But
Well,
yeah, I love to mix it up, and I'm a double bass player, and I went to North Texas as that, so I played, I studied all the classical repertoire and had formal teaching on double bass, and then when I moved to LA, I was like, wow, I can surf. And after about 2 years out there, I was playing in Jake Hanna's trio, which is a straight, Jake Hanna's one of the swingingest ride cymbals in history, with a great guitar player named Doug McDonald. He's a LA jazz guy. And then at night, I was sneaking off and playing with rock bands and recording with metal bands. And the thing is, if Jake Hanna knew what I was doing at night, he would have fired me on the spot. Like, I could not tell him that I was playing rock. He resented it. If it wasn't triplets and swing, he wanted nothing to do with it. But, I did my homework in school. I was a good reader. I played styles well. If you need me to solo, I can do that. I learned to play good salsa music by getting fired from bands in Miami, and I learned the hard way on a lot of things. But it ended up being a pretty diverse career, and working with everybody from John Anderson and Yes and Jethro Tull, making records with Ian, and or smooth jazz with like the Rippingtons or David Benoit or Larry Carlton or any of those. And that's kind of, I got pretty diverse. I was doing a lot of recording on metal records, as we were talking about before, where I had to, they paid me more money to keep secrets than they did to play eighth notes. But one thing it inspired in me was to write some books, kind of formulating my thoughts. And in that series of books back in the early 90s, really opened up education for me, which led to me teaching at BIT, GIT, that whole Musicians Institute network out there. And that's where I taught a little bit before, but where I started falling in love with watching other people get better instead of looking in the mirror, and kind of never look back. It's like I do feel like I've had the kind of, as one person said when they looked at my resume, it was funny, and it was at a college, and they said, well, I'm looking at this, and there's a lot of people on here and famous people, but honestly, Steve, it looks like you can't keep a job.
I guess that's
Okay.
one way to look at it, right?
Yeah. Now, I would spend about a year with a band, and then and they were kind of right. I just love playing all kinds of different music, and maybe that's one thing I love about education, is that, as you guys well know, there's no two student. It's so different every day for me, at least. Like, every semester is different, different students. It's not the same people in the same bands playing the same music. There's always a different approach to reaching a student, a different approach to learning, a different stuff that I learned from one student I actually share with another sometimes, because especially at Berkeley, students have been turning me on to music I would never have listened to had I not had them as students. So
Yeah.
yeah, kind of
I remember in the 90s was when I got involved with National Guitar Workshop, and Cheryl was involved on the East Coast. And that's where I first heard your name, because I think you may have done some stuff for them in LA, right?
I did some stuff in
Yeah.
LA with them, and then I came to Connecticut.
Yeah, New Milford. That's where we were. That was
Yeah,
our
yeah,
little
and I did stuff there, and I'll never forget. At this point, and I'm trying to remember the guy, I can see him who hired me, and if I mentioned his name, you would know it. But they put me on stage with this great drummer. I can't remember his name, and the guitar player from a new band, a Berkeley band, and I'm pretty sure he went to Berkeley as well, but people always confuse his name with John Patitucci. But who am I talking about, Ben? Come on now.
Petrucci.
John
Dream
Yeah.
Theater, right? Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, Dream Theater.
Yeah, John
Yeah.
Petrucci.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that guy, was he a student of yours, Cheryl? No. He played, we played a whole hour set by ear, and not playing songs, but just morphing around and doing what jazz musicians are way more comfortable doing. But he had the most amazing ear, and but yeah, that was Guitar Summer Workshop and all of that kind of people I met then. I still run across all the time to this day.
Do you think that your playing changed as the more you got into teaching?
Definitely.
In what way? What way do you think?
Well, I've heard it put, I want to think of the right way to say it, but teaching forced me to really look at how I play and analyze it and kind of break it down, because I've got some techniques that I use that may be a little unorthodox, and people often want to learn some of those, so I really had to break it down, and by wanting to be able to show them and teach them, I really had to look inside of myself at, am I really alternating my left hand accurately? Am I really not raking when I cross strings? So I would, before film and iPhones and all of that, I even had students like watching my right hand and tell me when I rake the string, because I don't think I am, but maybe I am. And just got really kind of analytical about my own stuff, which I think made me a better analyst of students. And then my relationship with Victor Wooten, that's been going on now for 36 years, when we started doing camps, in fact, the first time we taught together was at National Guitar Summer Workshop on the West Coast. He had gotten hired and he had to leave, and he brought me in as a sub. We taught together one day, and then I covered for him the last 2 days. And that's where a lot of the stuff I still teach today, and that we teach in the bass department, especially as Victor is one of our artists in residence, a lot of that was developed back then of us teaching together.
That's great. Cheryl, I'm going to kick it over to you and then Ben, because Steve, we always talk about practicing, and I'm curious to know, like, what kind of advice, not just that you have on practicing your own stuff, but like, how should guitar players be thinking about playing with bass players? And I think, Cheryl, you generally have some really good specific questions about that realm of things. So I'm gonna kick it your way to ask Steve
Yeah,
some
well,
stuff.
that's cool. Yeah, well, I was thinking, Steve, a bass player like you, who's involved in a lot of different projects, often has to learn a lot of music in a short period of time. Maybe you're going to have, maybe if you're lucky, you'll have a rehearsal or it's just a sound check. I mean, you have all those different situations, or even, if you had to do a Broadway show and you're subbing. So I guess, what is your approach to, and you might have several books going at once, right? Because you're working with so many different artists. You're going back from acoustic or electric, whatever thing. So if you have a process, when someone sends you, yeah, here's the music for this concert in 2 weeks, or at the end of the month, do you have a systematic way that you break down working on new material like that?
Well, and that's a really good question. It depends on how much time I have. But I got ear training is often overlooked and undervalued in academia. I'm going to say that straight up. Even I used to get in fights at traditional colleges, one over here where I was an artist in residence, arguing with the theory professor going, why does music theory get 3 credits and ear training only gets 1? Why does music theory meet 3 days a week and ear training only meets 2? And by then, University of Miami, where I had gone, and North Texas had converted it to 2 and 2, equally weighted. At least they were as important. But if you talk to most, people who are in the real world, they're going to tell you, let's flip that. Let's make ear training 3 credits and make the harmonic analysis 1. I'm more for equality, but so. My ear got really good. I developed it doing those ghosting sessions, because the producers would often have a very small window, like one day, to go in the studio unbeknownst to the band and have me overdub bass parts. So I would get a cassette mix the day before, and sometimes I would fly from LA back to New York to record these things. And I would have to learn the album on the flight over. So I had 5 hours, 6 hours to learn a whole album. And some of the songs were fairly complex. Most of them weren't, but some were. So I really developed my ear. So to this day, like on sabbatical last semester, I get a call from Lucas Nelson. And with basically, if you don't know Lucas, he's Willie's son, and he's an amazing artist in his own right. His bass player has to take off a few days to go play with some guy named Neil Young, and it left a chance for Lucas and I to work together, and we have over the years. But he called me and said, "Would you be into learning the whole show and coming out on the bus with us?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" And I had 2 weeks. So for me, my process is I listen first. I listen to the music. I try to assimilate as much as I can in my head and figure it out on my instrument, what I call visually and orally, but it's all going on in my head. My hands aren't doing anything. I may be planning fingerings or sorting things out. And so I'll do that, and then I'll pick up a bass, and I will literally chart everything out, because for some reason, like Victor is the opposite way. He's got a memory. He's able to do it, but I would rather write things out. I'm a visual person. I can still see the chart in my head. I can hear the music in my head. So I'll do that, and slowly, map out the forms, and then fill in certain lines that are what I think are key lines. And then later to find out, oh, I don't care if you play that or not. Well, I just spent all this time doing it. And so I did that. That's my process. And in the end, I have a whole book full of the whole show. And then I spend the last 2 or 3 days, once again, listening to it, imagining me playing it, not sometimes with the bass in my hand, but most of the time I'm driving around listening to it, but I'm on stage playing it. I'm visualizing the whole thing. Because I watch videos of them. I see where I am on stage. I kind of put myself in there. And then when I walk out, and in that case, I had it all memorized. I was still a little scared enough that I kept the charts close by, and I look around at the band, and I am twice the age of everybody in the band except Lucas, who's in his 30s. The rest of the band, these hot shots from Nashville, young folks. But yeah, that's the I did the same. And while I'm doing this, check this out. Joe Walsh calls me and he said, Steve, you want to come to Wichita and do this stuff with my band and with Tedeschi Trucks and with Vince Gill? And every name he said, my mind started to blow a little wider. Number one, because it's Joe Walsh. And if he hadn't mentioned any other names, if I had to pick my top 5 bands when I was learning Jimi Hendrix and Leonard Skinner and the James Gang, to get to play those songs with him. So I felt like I already knew all of that music, except I didn't. I'd never played it in my life. It was in my ear, but they have changed keys and changed arrangements and all kinds of stuff. So I learned both of those shows simultaneously and then performed them 2 weeks apart. Lucas out for a few days. Joe and Lucas was, like you said, Cheryl, just a sound check. Go in and we have a sound check that afternoon and we do the show that night. Joe, on the other hand, you fly in a week early. The big sound stage, the whole Eagles production, 50 people running around. I had a guitar tech, and it took me 2 days to figure out which person it was. You know, it was a big production, but at the same time, a crack. It's the Eagles band. It was basically the Eagles without Timothy B. Schmidt and me playing bass. So we're doing all those songs, but it was the same process. I wrote them all out and I charted them out. And then I asked Joe, here's one thing I'll never get used to is when I ask an artist, I go, what do you want me to play? And usually they'll say, well, if you just kind of take it like Ian Anderson did with me when we recut Bourrée for my solo album. He sent me 6 different versions to listen to and said, take this and take that from this and do this. And I put it all together into arrangement. But you go to Joe Walsh, who's got every bit the hit songs and bass lines that are kind of iconic. And I go, Joe, how do you want me to approach this? And he goes, man, I don't care what you play. Just play something I like. What? Just play something I like. I go, well, how will I know if you don't like it? You'll know.
That's
all the direction I got. And it sounds like it's liberating, but that's terrifying. If he said learn, this version and that version and feel free to put a fill in, he said, play whatever you like. He goes, I'm hiring you because I like the way you play. I have faith in you. And then all of a sudden the pressure starts mounting, like, okay, I've learned the live version. I've learned the James Gang version. I've learned the Barnstorm version. I've learned the Eagles version. I've learned all of these versions. I show up at the rehearsal knowing more versions of the song than the band does, which puts me in another interesting conundrum. Like, don't go in there like going, well, trying to sound all knowledgeable and stuff. No chance of that, really. But
I think that's another thing that I would love for you to talk about a little bit. I feel like you are very good at entering a lot of different situations and helping people feel comfortable, even as you're trying to suss it out. Like you have that kind of part of your personality. And I've been in a lot of meetings with you, and I've been in a lot of controversial moments in meeting. I can only imagine when you're on tour and when you're working with different leaders. There's a lot about how you present yourself, like as a person and as a professional, that puts people at ease. And did you develop that over time, or were there things that stood out about how you kind of learned how to do that?
But thank you for that, by the way. I'm not sure I would agree on in a lot of circumstances but I do absolutely believe this, and I tell every entering student this, that careers, notes are important. Music is important. Music but the one thing that has glued my career together with all the different music, with all of everything, is that I believe that music careers are built on relationships. And I learned early on to try. This is my goal. Whenever I have an interaction with a person, whether it's a colleague, whether it's a bandmate, whether it's the policeman who pulls me over, I want for us to go our separate way at the end of it, feeling like at least we both got a little bit of what we wanted. Does that make sense? Like, it doesn't happen so often with the police, but with most people I engage, I want us to both walk away feeling like I'm glad we're here. I'm glad we met, even though, and y'all know that we have some difficult conversations sometimes with each other, with students, with faculty. But can we walk out of the office together and at least be aiming toward a mutual benefit? And that's a huge goal in my career. I don't know. People respond better when they're comfortable. And I respond better when I'm comfortable. And I learned that from being in bands where I wasn't very comfortable. And I learned it from some jazz masters who took a 22-year-old boy from South Carolina and really put him to task. And in a lot of ways, so I learned through reverse reinforcement, if that makes sense. Like, if somebody hurts me, I'm going to find a way to convey that information without hurting somebody else. And I know it's possible. I mean, I see us do it. I see people do it all the time. So it's kind of a roundabout way to just say that comfortable people perform better. I know I do. I know people around me do. Whether, as Ron Carter loves to say, his simple saying, when I leave a situation, a recording or a bandstand, my goal is for the leader to miss me. Really that simple. Miss me musically, miss whatever I bring to the table. That's why folks like Lee Sklar, bass player, Nathan East, bass player, and I know I'm speaking of the bass players because I know them so well, Bob Glob, and they bring life to whatever session they're in. And on a tour bus, it's really critical where you're only making music 2-3 hours a day, and the other 21 hours, we just got to get along.
That's right. Ben, what about you? What's on your mind?
There's just so much here, but I think I've always heard a quote that sounds exactly like what you're describing of, you can learn what to do and learn what not to do, through other people like that. And that's definitely something that, you know, I know I've experienced it, you know, playing with, you know, certain musicians, certain performers. It's like, that's all right. That's not how I'm going to handle this situation if I'm on the other end of it.
You get twice as many lessons if you go through life that way. Not just looking for the positive lesson, look for that negative lesson and get positive reinforcement from it. Exactly.
Ben, there's a question you want to ask the question? Ask Steve the
Yes,
question.
yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
So yeah, we asked this question for all of our guests in this, and it's always great hearing, you know, the different answers to it. But so the question is, what do you think students here at Berklee should be asking that they're not thinking of?
You could have given me a little heads up on that, you know. Kinda,
It's a good question. You know, what's a question that people aren't thinking about asking at their
well,
stage, you know?
and I'll say this, most people aren't thinking of it, but what makes me think of what my answer is going to be is that I've got a fresh email in my box that I'm going to return that I get from several students a year, not nearly enough. And I don't go out petitioning for this kind of question, but they come to my office and they want to know about more than the music. They want to know about careers. They want to know about, well, basically I would say, ask me about anything related to the music business that has nothing to do with music. And you know, it's difficult because they don't have a point. Students generally don't have a point of reference. So I think, you know, I think of the one time at Career Day, I brought in Neil Steubenhaus, great LA based player, former Berklee faculty member, actually went to Berklee, but he was a financial mentor of mine to teach me, you know, Berklee, we teach you how to play, ostensibly how to make money, but we don't put any focus on how to treat money, how to treat, you know, how to, the things like back in high school days, and I'm older than everybody here, but there was a course called home economics. And as crazy as that sounds, like there was a lot of valuable practical information in that about, you know, home economics. How about business, music, career economics? What a great course for me. I think I would love to teach a course like that because I learned some basic principles early in my career that allow me at this point in my career to kind of do whatever I want to do. And it's basic business economics. Vic and I had an idea for a course, and I think this should be part of the core. It's called Worst Case Scenario. And I know with Cheryl and Kim and probably you too, Ben, we've all been in a studio, on a tour bus, in a classroom, anywhere where stuff goes wrong. And one disservice I think we do at Berklee, at any college, because I used to do it when I taught recording technology at another college, is that we always create the perfect scenario. We've got nice practice rooms with amps. Everything works. We've got a whole staff of drum technicians to come around and change a head. And so we had this idea, and we literally wrote out 14 weeks of a different scenario each week where something breaks and how to learn to deal with it. And if you just got it in your head, how Steve and Victor or Cheryl and Kim or Ben dealt with this situation, 10 years down the road, when the electricity goes out on stage, you don't look like a dum-dum. You know, you know there are options to keep the show going.
You know,
10 years.
Steve, when Joe Walsh was here, back when I was assistant chair, he came and one of the things he asked was for us to run down a Guitar Center and get the worst guitar off the wall that was like totally not, and then hand it to him, and then he had to set it up while he was on stage,
While
like
he's talking.
yeah, while he's talking, and he
That's
just showed
exactly.
how to do it. Yeah,
That's exactly what we teach in ILRE 375 when I used to
yeah,
teach it. We
yep,
would have the students come in and you're coming in with the scenario that your bus broke down and you're late. And we want you to set up your whole band or set up whatever you're going to do, but you're going to engage the audience the whole time. You're going to talk to us. You're either going to tell us what you're doing. You're going to make up a story about something that is so crazy that you can still tell the story and tune your guitar. But that is such a valuable skill. And Joe, there is no better person. And having worked with him, you know, Ben will, well, all guitar players would appreciate this, but I go into his studio and we're working on a version of we're doing two. This is for my solo album, a duet album, and I whatever I do is just me and one other person, no overdubs. We're just doing it live. And that's Joe. You want to do Ashes, the Rain and I, which is an old James Gang song, and then the night before I had this idea of a way to play ka-doon, 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 all on the bass with the chord part. And I said, would you be up for doing Rocky Mountain Way just as a duet? And expecting Joe to he said yes. And then I thought, okay, here comes the crew. They're going to set up his amps. They're going to get his touring rig, because the other song was 12-string acoustic, and we had already mic'd that. But I thought he's going to mic up this big thing and do it. And he reaches around, and I've got a picture of the amp that was in the control room. And he plugs into this thing, and I'm thinking, well, what's he going to do? Are we just going to track with this and then do the real guitar sound? And then he started to play. And then I realized that Joe Walsh is this,
the hands, yeah,
the hands,
yeah.
and
Hands
his
and
phrasing
yeah,
and
yeah.
everything about the way he plays. And it made this little amp. It was a blue amp or something, just so bizarre. It sounded like a stack of Marshalls, the way he played it. So I've heard Victor Wooten do similar things through amps that just aren't great. He makes them sound great. I think I want to instill that into students, to where that idea of worst case scenario, if you show up at Madison Square Garden and that's the only amp you have, what are you going to do? And it's valuable stuff. So I might not be around when that course gets written, but it's on Victor Wooten's radar if anybody wants to collaborate with him and finish it up.
Yeah, I mean, send them over, because I think I've been thinking about this a lot. Cheryl and I talk about this a lot, and we had Reeves Gabrels here, who was a Berkeley student back in the late 70s, early 80s, and played with David Bowie for 15 years, and now he's in The Cure. And he was saying, the word career has come to mean almost something different, like this sort of like pie in the sky thing, like you get this job and then your life is okay. And he was saying to the students, I think that it sort of masks the idea that you have a life, like a musical life, and that there are different times where you get paid, and you could think of that as your career and how you manage your money. But you might be on a high and then you're on a low. And then you're on a high, and then you go over and do something different. And I think that's what you're talking about, and that's what we're talking about, is an art life, like a music life that's a professional life, is a lot more like rich, but also like nuanced and variable than this idea of like, okay, like I'm at this beautiful school and I have everything is really nice, and then I do all the right things and check all the right boxes, and I get this job, and then that's my career. But that's kind of not the way a music life works in a lot of ways.
So true. So true. It's my first term for it, and I think I learned this in LA, but as a musician, and you know, it, there was an era where you could go work in the LA studios and you could be the Carol Kay, the Lee Sklar, and just get Chuck Rainey, get session after session after session, and just be doing that. But I watched it change out there. When I worked in Larry Carlton's band, he was going, "Man, you should have been here 10 or 15 years ago." That's when it, and man, it was crushing for me. It was insanely great. Everything was. And he's telling me, "Man, you should have been here before. It was so much better." I think that still goes on. I think I tell people, "Wow, you should have been here in the 90s or 2000s." And they're Berkeley graduates kicking butt in LA. If I tell them, "Oh, you should have been here back then," they'll go, "It's pretty good right now." Doesn't mean it was easy. I don't think it's ever been easy, but I think I started this concept, like for me, my career is this river, and it flows kind of through me, but there are all of these tributaries to that river. It's not one flow coming out of melting snow off the Rockies. It's a stream coming in here. It's some runoff from the road over there. It may even be a broken septic tank somewhere out there. But it's all flowing in my direction. And it's all fertile. Think about it. I won't have to go into graphic detail here, but and I look at my career like that. It is like some of the gigs that have realized the most potential for me, and this is educationally and musically, touring or recording, came from stuff that wasn't so great. Where like that one example I gave earlier of just reading 8 bars of treble clef changed my career. You know, saying yes to a gig not because the money's good, because the money's horrible, but because I like the music, or maybe I don't even like the music, but I love the people that are doing it. And you know that old game, well, you know, so-and-so's doing it, so maybe you want to do it. Meanwhile, they're off going, well, you know, Steve Bailey's doing it. So they parlay this, but I'm telling you that it's entrepreneurial thinking like that really has made the difference in my career. Is like, I want to, there's so many facets of it to me that are fascinating, and I still find them fascinating. I really think, I don't know. I mean, my personal students that I take under, we look at some specific things we want to learn. They have some challenges. One was Kira Moser when she was doing her master's. Now she teaches in my department, but she. And I'll say this because this is how she describes herself. I wouldn't be comfortable. She goes, "I'm blind. I can't see the fingerboard the way you see it." She plays incredibly, but I told her, I said, if you want to teach, you've got to learn to see that fingerboard like a sighted person sees it. Because you're going to be teaching most people that are sighted. So they need that point of reference. But at the same time, you can teach me more. And that's what happened in our semester of lessons. I really worked with her on visualizing a fingerboard that she had never seen in her life. She had only felt. But a way to see it in her mind and relate it to students. And then she taught me a whole nother level of visualization and faith and trust and instinct and hearing and listening and all of that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of streams, I think, to create whatever Well, I'll speak for myself. Whatever I've become, it didn't come from one pond or one river. There's that all kinds of stuff. I still get excited about certain styles of music that I haven't gotten to play yet. And I told you I got fired from a salsa band in Miami. Now think about that. That's like being fired from a country gig in Nashville. Once the word gets out, you're done. But I faced a choice that night of the trombone player coming to me and saying, he's saying, man, I know this gig's for Friday and Saturday, but we're just going to make it Friday night. And he said, man, I said, well, my reading bad? And he goes, no, you read the whole page. You did well reading. He said, it just didn't feel right. And I didn't even understand what he meant. So I put my head down and I walked out and I said, thank you for telling me that. And I'm driving back to my dorm room. And this is a college story. I'm driving back to my dorm room and one side of me is saying, I'll never play Cuban, Puerto Rican music again because I suck. And the other side of me said, now how many radio stations does that push button radio tune to? And what are you listening to? So I changed every station. And in Miami, you can pick up Cuban radio stations. And I just started listening to the music. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to take this as an opportunity to learn the music. Snap ahead a year and a half, I'm playing with Paquito D'rivera, the biggest Cuban act to come over, defect from Cuba, and with a great band from Cuba and Michelle Camilo on piano and all of this killer band. And we play in Miami, and guess who our opening act was?
Wow.
That band that fired me.
Nice.
And I remember walking into sound check. I had my bass and we're walking down to the stage and you could see the band realizing that Paquito D'rivera, they see the star coming into the house. We're going to do our sound check. And he looks at me, the trombone player, and he's like, he recognized me and that I'm walking in bass and I walked straight towards him, looking right at him. And I could see he was scared. Like, what's this guy going to say? And as I got close, I stuck my hand out and I said, I've been wanting to thank you for a year and a half. For what? I said, for firing me, but for telling me why. Did y'all freeze or did I freeze?
No, is maybe Ben is left, but I think what's happening?
I think where are you, Cheryl?
We're all in the office at different places, but somehow
Yeah, they froze.
They did.
And they went away. But anyway, I thank the guy for not so much firing me, but explaining to me why he fired me. And you know, it's like so often in our careers we get that kind of information, but we get the fact that we get fired or we don't get rehired, but nobody tells us why. And the best thing I think sometimes, as hard as it is to do, even with faculty or with students or whoever, is to really tell them straight up as much as we can in our academic environment, but it's important.
No, I mean, I think that's a really powerful story, and there's definitely one students need to hear, because not everybody would do that. I mean, there was something in you that took that as a cue to get in the shed, and some people, they would take that and run away. And I think that's the difference. And I think being able to see that experience as a learning experience and a place of growth. You do learn more from your failures often than your successes.
That's the perfect way to say it. Andre Agassi said, the great tennis player, legend, he said, I learn far more from my losses than my wins.
Right.
Your bank account gets bigger from your wins, but your knowledge base gets better from his losses. So in our case, and that's why I thanked the guy. I said, thank you for telling me, because I had a choice the next day. To heck with Latin music, which I didn't know was going to be my first big gig out of college, but I certainly wouldn't have learned it as well as I did had I not been fired. I can't think of a better word.
Yeah, yeah. So that's, I think the point of that is don't be afraid of failure. Or,
Yeah.
sometimes if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, there is, or yeah, yeah, yeah. It's to that point of somebody said that, if you go ski and you charge down the mountain and you never fall, you're not learning what you need to learn.
Yeah.
Everybody who falls skiing is trying to pick up their speed and get better. And if you're not falling at all, you're probably not trying to get better.
That's great. Cheryl, as we finish this pot of coffee here, is there something on your mind you want to
Yep.
bring
Well,
up?
thank you, Steve. I'm glad we found the time to do this, and there's so much, that you shared with us from practice, protocols and just how you develop a life in music and just some fun stories. Thanks for being our guest. I know it's going to be a popular show.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. I mean, to hang with the three of you guys, we've never gotten to hang the three of us together. We should make sure, and Ben, you can be an honorary guest. You can pay the check, but we're going out. We should do that.
I like that. See,
Hey, you know what?
see, there you go. That's like
This
tour
is
bus
this is
culture. It's like the
recording.
young guy pays. Young guy pays.
I am spending money like you can't imagine.
Let's go. Let's
I'm
do
leaving
it.
my donors. They gave me all this money to spend it while I'm still there, and
All right.
let's
You're
spend
in.
some.
So see, this is it. This is the building relationships part of your advice that you're giving to all the students. But I love that. I love your curiosity and how into everything you are and how it just drives you back to the practice room. I think that's really cool for everybody to
Yeah,
hear.
one thing I didn't tell you though is I practiced, and you started to go down that path, but I practiced way more than I needed to.
Mhm.
Like back, I don't know if you remember the day, but early on, we were always told to just practice more and more and more and more. And the science has progressed, at least for me over the years, to take breaks and have other things to do. But I was obsessed.
I hear you. Ben, anything last on your mind as we're kind of finishing this one up?
This was probably my favorite episode I think we've done so far. It was just
Oh, he
much,
says that
so
to
much-
everybody.
No, and I have proof. We can pull up some.
Now
One
you only
thing
gotta
I've learned
pay
at
half
Care,
the check. Yeah.
Kim and Cheryl and I can spot a fibber a mile away. And Ben, you're a fibber. No, thank you.
This was really great. I mean, there's so many good points just from the musical and non-musical aspects of it, and being a rock musician myself, I love hearing some of the the stories with that. But it was just really, I think there was a lot of the points you made on kind of the business side and the whole worst case scenario class idea. I think that's really something that students should be thinking about and hearing right now.
Do you know Russ Parrish?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's natural.
He was my writing partner. We wrote songs together in LA, and when he was kind of under the tutelage of Paul Gilbert,
Okay.
at and he started teaching at GIT, and we started writing songs together that we actually got John Anderson, the lead singer from Yes, to sing one of them once.
Wow. Wow.
I only reason I say that is because I look at you and you kind of remind me of him. And if you play like him, oh boy.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Really, I mean the playing and riffs that he does, and I've heard multiple projects. I know, a lot of it is kind of a parody of a lot of the stuff
Uh,
he does, but the playing aspect and the writing aspect, I always thought was just incredible.
I'm going to send you a recording. I was in a band right after I left Dizzy Gillespie. The drummer from Maynard Ferguson got a backer out of Pennsylvania, and we met in Denton, Texas, to make an album. And I had just gone to University of Miami the year or two before, and I met a young guitar player there that nobody knew of, but that I needed to help because I knew he was going to, he could help us. His name is Andy Timmons. And Andy was this punk student at University of Miami. I dragged him to Texas and told him we would only be there for 8 weeks, that this backer, and we were going to be the new Journey. And to make a long story short, Andy and I spent a year and a half in Denton, Texas, writing songs, and then moved to LA together, and still are close friends. But I need to send you that band's recording. It has a singer with a 2 octave higher range than Steve Perry, and Andy Timmons playing guitar way better than Neil Schon could ever play, and Ray Brinker every bit the drummer. That the only problem was that we didn't know that the world did not need another Journey, even if it was a better Journey. But I have the tapes to prove it with Andy. Andy's amazing on these things.
Oh, I'd love to hear those. I'd love to hear those.
Well, you guys, you know what? We could hang out forever, and I think we probably will hang out a little bit longer. But I want to say to everybody who's listening out there, thanks for being with us on Coffee Talk. Thank you, Cheryl Bailey, for today. Thanks, Steve Bailey. And thanks, Ben Cody. And we're going to keep hanging out. And everybody else, we will be with you guys on the next Coffee Talk. Thanks.